Here's a nice legal one for you then, Carly. I recently took on a new tenant, and as is normal, I took a 5-week deposit. I must admit I was 5 to 6 weeks late on sending the deposit to the appropriate deposit holders, which he is obviously legally obliged to do, is he not? Somehow my tenant found out about this and had his lawyer sent me a letter threatening to report me to the authorities, with which I'm told will possibly result in a mandatory high-level fine. Is there really no flexibility here, or do you think they're just trying to seek some kind of compensatory payment from me?
It is mandatory, so it's fairly black and white if you haven't protected it. It's very easy for tenants to go, and you can go and search things. Shelter, for example, have a system you can put in and tenancy details and you can see whether it is protected. Very easy for tenants to go and check. And it is, a mandatory penalty, compensation of 1 to 3 times the value of the deposit and the return of the deposit. So my advice would be to consider whether you've suffered any breaches of the tenancy and see if there's anything that can be offset, but I would certainly look to negotiate. Avoid court if you can, because it's just extra cost. To try and negotiate it down towards the 1 times rather than 3 times.
All right, so, and you mentioned the return at 1 times the deposit value and perhaps the return of the deposit. Yeah. So what happens if it is at the beginning, like this is, of the tenancy, and they're stuck on it? They want the deposit back and a fine of the 1 times. Yeah. Does that mean then you run the tenancy with no deposit?
Yeah,
because that's quite dangerous, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's incredibly difficult. So unfortunately, there's no way you're going to get around with that, and it's about trying to negotiate a deal that's best.
And
for you.
Is 5 to 6 weeks an offence?
Yeah, it's 30 days that you've got to protect it. It used to be 14. 2 weeks goes in a flash, doesn't it? So they've extended to 30 days. But, unfortunately, we still see landlords miss that deadline. It's quite rare they're missing that deadline. I think what we see more commonly, actually, is where they might meet the deadline or they don't quite comply with that particular scheme's requirements. So what I'd say to anybody is, either get an agent to do it for you, or you should be making sure you're checking the requirements of the particular scheme. Really go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure you keep an accurate record that you've complied with the requirements of that scheme. You've served the prescribed information, you've sent them the terms and conditions as required, and make sure you've got good, strong evidence that that's all been received.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's quite a shocker, isn't it? Well, so if an agent does that on your behalf, does he take responsibility for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. I think most of the time, if an agent does, we do see agents not necessarily always do it perfectly. They normally deal with the compensation on your behalf, but the landlord could still be liable. Comes a messy three-way claim.
Just use a good agent.
Yeah, and they're doing it day in, day out, and they have their systems and processes, set up to do it. When you're busy and you don't have those systems and processes, if you're trying to juggle that sort of thing, it's easy to slip your mind or not do quite perfectly.
A good agent will have a software that does this automatically as part of that pre-tenancy, initial monies process, and they talk to all the schemes. And it's dealt with.
I think we live in such litigious times that I just think anybody doing their own management these days,
I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, I wouldn't do it. And I'm a lawyer. I've said this many times. I'm a lawyer specialising in this area of law, married to a plumber. But actually, we had our own property, just sold it. Actually, to manage it is incredibly difficult, even though that's our specialism. It's the time, care, focus, and attention that's required, and the systems and processes that we're always talking about that you need. It's so highly regulated.